Welcome to UberCube, the podcast we discuss all things cube, but with refreshments. This is your host, Anthony Adams, aka Uber Bear, and this evening I am joined by both of my wonderful hosts.
Hi, I'm May, also known as Magic.
And
it's Stu. That's Stu MTG. And today we are joined by an esteemed and incredibly welcome special guest to the show, Slick Jagger himself. Say hi.
Hey, everybody. How's it going? Slick Jagger, a.k.a. Steve, a.k.a. the Cube Head.
So we were just having an interesting conversation. I just learned something. Life is all about learning. It's every day, right? And I was announcing this wonderful bar that we should visit while Steve is in town for the UberCube event, which we'll talk about very shortly. And we were going to the Drought Bar? How do you pronounce Drought Bar? Drought?
I think it should have given it away a little bit.
There's a G?
Drought.
There's a G?
And bar, like drinking, kind of doesn't go very well together.
I felt like it was like there was a juxtaposition or some irony in load.
In
like
your head, was it a dad joke?
Yeah,
like,
it was like a
funny dad
hipster
joke to you?
Like you're going there to get refreshments and libations, yet, you know what, I'm not quite so thirsty anymore. My palate's quite cleansed. A Drought Bar. How do you pronounce it? Aluminium? Draft bar.
It's pronounced draft. Like a draft beer.
100% not spelled that way in my defense. So let me ask you another question since we're on this topic. What kind of horses do Anheuser-Busch use? How do they spell that? D-R-A-F-T horses or D-R-A-U-G-H-T horses? Question mark? Anybody?
So, as we have a special guest on the show today, Anthony, why don't you go ahead and, bring in the conversation? What are we going to talk about today?
So, one of our headliners we have showing up at the thing, I don't know if you guys know this, is CubeHeads. CubeHeads. It's a project you've been working on, right, Steve? You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, CubeHeads is... So, I'd probably get into it, but I've been playing Magic for a long time. Had a couple breaks in the interim, but... I used to host a Magic podcast called Money Draft for a long time. Jason Alt from EDH Rec and my friend JR. And last year I started CubeHeads as like a project to start to interview the people that are in the Cube community and try to like just have conversations with people in person and talk to people about their cube, their life, their journey into Magic, what makes them happy, all those kind of things. Just to show more of like the human side of Magic and the cube format in general. Because one, I think coming out of COVID, I knew that I wanted to do something, but I wasn't really sure what. I knew that I was tired of Zoom because I was doing it for work. And like, I was just like, look, like whatever I do, I just want it to be in person. So like, I'm going to have to commit to like traveling for this and like going to places and sitting and talking to people. And thankfully Magic events are a great ground for that. But yeah, I mean, I just, Cube has brought me so much happiness and has, you know, when I was at my least involvement in Magic in my life, the one thing I did was still cube with my friends in Philly. And so like for me, cube has always provided me so much happiness that I was like, you know what, like if there's something I can do to like shine a light on how awesome this is, that's what I wanted to do. So it was kind of like, I wanted to find a passion project in Magic and like do something creative because my job is very much not creative. And like how I can like, you know, also in my head at least, like try to do good or like shine a light on like awesome things that like provide people happiness. And I think Cube Magic events, like playing Magic in person is like one of the coolest things on earth, I think. So like that was the thing that like, you know, I wanted to put the spotlight on. So that's my tirade about CubeHeads.
Yeah, awesome. There's something tangible. There's something real about it, right? It's tactile. It's something about the paper. I know we have a lot of listeners that are huge into digital Magic, and I love that, but I am horrendous at that style of play.
It's not how I want to play. It's not how I want to spend my time necessarily, because I'm an interactive guy, right? I want to be with my friends in the same room, right? The magic is a wonderful part of our social activity, and I agree, I'm not an online person either.
No, it's clearly just the paper. Are they adding additives to our Magic the Gathering paper? Find out more at 7 o'clock news.
Yeah, my fingertips itch. That's why I have sleeves.
I think you might be onto something, though.
Yeah.
You might be surprised. Click now. I'm just
To
kidding.
put a bow on that, when Arena came out, and during that time, and in the way back when we were doing like spell table and stuff like that to scratch those itches. Arena's great. It's a wonderful like setup. I love the little dogs and the little critters, and the card play is really cool. But something about when I wanted to tell someone hello, all I could click was hello. Great work. Excellent. Those little emotes or whatever they are, the little circle of emotes, and you have, I realized that has a purpose to keep the game not toxic, so there's no exchanges of toxicity, or you can't feel like when someone lost, they can share that. I get that from a business perspective, but at the same time,
you can definitely emote that, but like that's definitely just like MTGO chat is, MOBA chat is probably worse, but like MTGO chat is like probably some of the worst gaming chat on the planet.
I played League of Legends.
I get it from their perspective. Like, hey,
I played League of Legends.
You know what you
for a
can
while.
do? You can send a picture of a hedron dancing. That's what you can do. That's what you can do.
So before we go any further down this conversation, we're going to do the thing that we always do here at UberCube, and we're going to enjoy our droughts of the session. Starting out with our just esteemed guest. What are you having on this wonderful evening, Steve?
So I'm not having a draft, spelled DRAUGHT. I'm actually having a cocktail because I'm going out to dinner after this, and I didn't want to have beer before wine. So I am having my favorite mixed drink, which is called Naked and Famous. It's a mezcal drink, which is equal parts of mezcal, Aperol, yellow chartreuse, and lime juice. And it's got an awful name, and it's a pink drink, but it feels like you're getting kicked in the face by a mule. So it's my jam.
Not bad, not bad.
Nice.
How about yourself, May? Some Costco special.
Well, I'm also following suit by not having a cider or beer this time. I am having a vanilla Coke and rum.
Ooh.
Oh, that sounds delicious, actually. Yeah. Stu and I got to up this game here hard.
I know we are, because we got some Wicked Weed IPAs going here. I've got their Pernicious India Pale Ale. What about yourself?
I've got the Wicked Weed Hazy IPA. It's pretty good stuff, actually. I enjoy it. Let's crack them open and get to the topic. So, Steve, you're one of our esteemed guests at the UberCube event. You have booked your seat, and you're coming out to join and hang with the team. April 27th, we're going to all just convene in Chapel Hill, North Carolina at the Gathering Place. It's going to be 64 players, 8 cubes. The final countdown, the top 8 is going to compete in my powered vintage cube, which we played last night, Stu.
We did.
It's better now.
It's much better.
It's good.
Your changes are phenomenal.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
Great,
I felt
job.
pretty good about what happened last night.
You should.
Confidence level has soared. But I think it's going to be like a really fun experience, and I'm hoping that we get a chance to sit down with you, Steve, and work on this project you have by chance. That'd be great to sit down with you and talk about the Cube Heads thing. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I would love to. I mean, it's definitely going to happen. There's no way. Forcibly, or I'll just sneak up behind you with the camera, and all of a sudden you'll be on the channel. So
while I'm having a nice drought. It's going to be really good.
While you're in the drought.
We're just not going to let it die. Yeah. We get it. We're American.
You know what? That's fine. You have a drought weekend.
Hamburger country.
Stu and I will drink all the beer. You stay in drought, and everything will be all good. All right?
See, I knew
you want
to
keep being a smart ass? Fine.
This is why I like this guy so much.
I love him so much. So, we have a topic. We actually do that too. Yeah. Aside from the event, aside from the spiel that we gave in the beginning. And I thought this would be like an interesting, interactive conversation piece for each one of us to learn a little bit about where our headspace is. And the episode I've currently titled, this is always TBD, right? Sometimes I listen to what we say and I change it, but right now we're going to call it The Open Lane. as in a discussion on how we draft and how we interact with Cube during the draft portion. I thought it'd be some interesting dialogue to have here. So I've got some preliminary questions to really like get a litmus test so that the listeners can understand where your Cube head is, Steve, and what you kind of have going on. And so we kind of talked about, you have a cube, or you've been thinking about a cube or designing the idea of a cube?
So I've never actually finished a cube project, right? I am a purveyor of cubes, but I am a non-committal cuber.
Terrible. I mean, how can someone be like that?
Yeah. Maybe you should just give him the notes to the Doom Cube. He could finish it.
No. It's a long process.
I've had ideas for like a combo cube that are like on the back burner, but the current thing that I thought about, because my time in Chicago is like something called the best friends cube, where like every card has to have an animal in the art.
Okay, sure.
And like trying to figure out like, but like I like high powered vintage power level environments. So like, how do I create something that's like broken but very cute? Like that's what I want to do. So like that's like kind of the theme that I've been thinking about. And
no
like,
custom art? Can you not
360 rats. There you go. There's your cube.
I'm there.
360 rat colonies,
Crypt rats,
and a box of basic swamps. I'm down for that.
Yeah, what's the new set coming out? Is it Burn Willow, Bum Willow, Burn Willow?
Yeah.
That might
Shout
actually
out to the Shoebill Stork.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw you posted
animal.
about it. I actually posted in response to that because this is where we always say that the internet's not listening, but like we're having kind of a conversation in my house, and then suddenly my Facebook feed has like a video of someone like walking around this prehistoric looking critter, which anybody that hasn't looked up this stork, you need to look it up. It's insane. I'll put a picture in the show notes.
Like a dinosaur that's just walking around.
It's kind of frightening. Yeah, it's a little frightening.
Huge.
They're
huge.
gigantic. Yep.
It's just like the most fearsome looking bird, but also looks super derpy at the same time. It's the best. You don't know whether to laugh or be terrified. And that's me in a nutshell. I love that.
Don't worry. You can trust them with your babies, apparently.
Yeah. I'm hoping it is a herbivore. We're really leaning in on that. So, question for you. It's kind of a generic question. This is more of the litmus test before we get into the breakdown. Favorite Magic card of all time?
Lightning ball.
That's a good answer.
Hell yeah.
Is that an alpha? Graded lightning bolt?
No, it's not an alpha. That's a beta. It's a beta.
Just a
it's
beta.
A beta slab.
Just
Isn't
a
that one
beta.
signed?
Sorry,
Yeah.
I showed for those. For everyone listening, I showed a beta slab lightning bolt that I keep right next to my work from home desk. So
That's awesome.
That is nice.
Yeah.
make sure that I bring the heat, and I got Morphling over my shoulder too. Shout out to Arcade Post, one of my favorite Magic artists of all time.
Very nice.
Nice.
That's a cool card as well.
So,
But yeah, Lightning Bolt's my favorite card. I probably have more reps playing Burn and or Gruul and or Boros, very aggressive decks. I've probably won more cubes with Embercleave than any sane human. So like, I also very much enjoy, like, my favorite card to win a game of Magic with is Brain Freeze. But my favorite card of all time is Lightning Bolt. So like, I just like to make friends is basically what I'm saying.
I love that you brought up Brain Freeze, because that was something that I've been campaigning for Anthony to add that to his vintage cube. Like, he's been kind of pushing back, and I said, look, it really isn't going to take a whole bunch of slots in your cube to be able to provide support for the Underworld Breach Brain Freeze combo, right? You can do it with Black Lotus, that's already in the cube, and then if you only need Lion's Eye Diamond as another edition, right? Now it's only 3 cards, and you've got this.
Do you have a Yogg-Will?
yes. So, like, once I got the initiative,
No excuses.
I lost 15 pounds. My life got better. My career soared. I got a huge raise. I retired early, and then I added all these packages to my Storm, right? So here we are. I mean, everything's just way better.
Note for cube curators, vintage curators, this is what happens when you add the initiative and Storm to your cube. You just retire next week. You're a
Change my entire
millionaire.
life, yes.
Thank you. Well done.
So like, way back in the day, in almost 10 years ago now, which is crazy, we used to when I was in college, we would all my friends would come over to my house, and I would hook my laptop up to a TV, and there would be like 8 of us drinking beer doing vintage cubes, and we were just binging John Finkel's stream at the time, and all we would do is just scream ABS, like always be storming. Just go in, just force it every time. If you force it, you can make something happen. Like there's 8 of us in this room. We can pilot a storm deck with 8 of us to a victory, no matter how bad it is. Like a couple of that crew were PT players. Like it was just like, it was great. It was great. So yeah, always be storming is definitely a, but when I play against those players, I think I've talked about this before, but like I fell into loving aggro because I just learned to play Magic with people that were very competitive and way better than me at the game. So like the only way that I could like adapt to beating them was just going from 20 to 0 as fast as possible. And that like pushed me to just get way more reps with aggro than any other archetype than in Magic.
I think if you're trying to become as competitive as possible, even in a localized environment, right? And I've mentioned this to you when we've played, not necessarily just the vintage cube, right? We've played a lot of our cubes. It's incredible how many times I've sat down and thought, you know what? I've got all these synergies in my deck and I've tried to be a little cutesy here and, I've got all these ideas for what I can do. And then I sit down against someone and they play creatures, turn them sideways, and I'm dead in 4 or 5 turns. It's like, man, sometimes just playing aggro is just, it wins a lot of games.
Well, it's funny you should mention that. We recently had like a interchange where we're playing Cube. This was in a previous trial test of the new and improved UberCube 540. And while we were playing at Stu, I just like beat him like on turn 6, and he said, "Man, dang, I told you, it's always aggro decks." And I'm like, dude, like I got like Metalworker attacking you at this point. Like this is not I don't even,
if you turn sideways,
he's turning sideways, he's aggro. I'm like, aggro tempo isn't because it's faster than your deck. That is not that's me saying draft and drought in the same sentence, right? Like, so if it was slower.
I played aggressively
yesterday.
yesterday.
Eventually we'll laugh.
Exactly.
Dad jokes are
I'm
real.
sorry.
I'm gonna laugh.
So I knew, Steve, that you were my person. Like, you didn't even know this. Like we were in complete symbiosis when I walked up to you. You were playing. I was the weird duck when I brought our mass project we did as a team, the dumpster fire cube, right? Where we basically had like, I think it's 10 curators at this point, maybe 11, just slapped together nonsense, mythic rares only, under $2. You can look up that project. We have an episode on it. I brought it to Bar Cube night with no understanding of what Loop and all these people were trying to convey. I'm like, this must be a Bar Cube. And he's like, you got sleeves. I'm like, well, I assure you, this is not a good cube. Like, this is curated like from 10 people. It's a social experiment at best. When you walked up to me, and we'd all been enjoying ourselves at CubeCon 2023, the Delta bar or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And you said, you like patted me on the back and you said, "You've got Spirit Monger in this cube." You want to tell the audience what Spirit Monger is and why you love this card?
Spirit Monger is an outstanding Magic card and was a constructed powerhouse at the time. It's a 5-mana 6/6 with 3 a black and a green. It is a beast in creature type and in true nature. Whenever it deals damage to a creature, it gets +1/+1. For a black, you can regenerate it, and for green, you can change the color of it.
So you could dodge that Doomblade.
Yeah.
What? It's already black?
Well, it's already black.
You could dodge that Doomblade again.
There you go. I mean, this was at a time, though, where, like, if you were playing Magic in a store, like, you could just still, like, catch Circle of Protections at a table. Like, when Spirit Monger was printed, like, it was still, like, when you would go into an LGS, it was just people playing with the pile of cards they had. Like, it wasn't, like, a, it was still...
It does get past Mother of Runes, though.
Yeah.
So that's something.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, you're going to give your thing protection and then try to block it? Well, guess what?
Yep. Pick again. But I love Spirit Monger so much because it's from the set Apocalypse, and that was like very near to like my childhood Magic playing. So When I learned to play Magic, it was in like a gift shop where the front half of the store was like it was called Gifts for Guys and Gals. All right. And the store was owned by a husband and wife. And they literally, the wife did the front of the store and the husband did the back of the store. So like it was like gift cards and candles and then baseball cards, Magic cards, and a singular table. Like an 8-person like long table. And that was it. It was a small store. And that was like the place for Friday Night Magic and like where we jammed out. So when I see a spirit monger, like all of that, like, it's like hearing an old song from childhood or something. Like all of that comes back into my head, like from that time. So that's why it gets me so amped up.
So before we move into the core topic, the reason why I'm doing this is we're building like you're getting a profile built on you. So when we move into the pack one, pick one type of discussion, it makes sense where are you grounded is what I'm doing. Like what do you gravitate towards? Where's your headspace? At? One more question. This is the last one. So we're going to recap. You like Ball Lightning a lot. It's a huge card for you. Embercleave is a good way to win.
Lightning.
You are about the storm, so you like the complexity of that. You want a cube with lots of little animals all over it, right? Like, if I was an FBI agent trying to... I feel like we've got pictures all over the floor and we're standing over going, I don't know if I can solve this case, but here we are. So, if you were in Ravnica, which guild would you join and why?
The honest, truthful answer would be like I would tell you Rakdos because I'm really demure.
Sneaky.
Like that's really where the heart is,
I likes it. He's an infiltrator.
Praise be to Lazav.
Nice. So let's get into we got this. We've painted a picture now. We know what your headspace is. It's interesting. We got this covered.
If you can follow it, that's better than me. So
we're trying. Embercleave loving animals that love storks that wants to be a spy. We got it.
And Breach. And Brain Freeze.
May, would you mind cracking open the conversation here on the pack one, pick one? Let's roll up in that.
Do you prefer to prepare for a draft or do you just go in blind? That's the real question.
Like when I go to a cube, no, I never look at a cube list. I ask like what cube, but I never look at a list before.
I always go in blind too, so don't feel too bad. I have my most fun when I have to try to figure it out from the information in the pack, because every card is an intentional choice by the curator, and every card is trying to tell me something. So figuring it out as I go is part of the fun for me.
I've asked the question, how do I win?
I'm not that enthusiastic, like, especially after CubeCon. Like some cubes are so weird that like I need the verbal rundown, but I don't need to see the list. Like I need you to tell me what we're trying to do here, so I can at least wrap my head around. Because I can't imagine not having an explanation and then playing like the Lightning Bolt cube where you start at 3 life and every creature's got 0 power, and you're like, "What's going on?" Like, so
I asked the curators. I'm like, "How do I win? What do I draft? How do I win?" And you told me that when I drafted a couple of your cubes. I asked Chris last night. We drafted his peasant cube. I was like, "How do I win?" He said, here's the ways that you can, be aggressive and win in the cube. And it worked. It was great.
I was about to ask you as a follow-up to that. Are you listening to them?
Absolutely.
I can tell. All right, cool. All right. So he beat me last night. He soft locked me, which is my favorite way to lose. I'm like, no matter what I do, there's no right decision. This is fantastic.
Soul herdering.
That's that good. That's that good making friends magic. That I like.
I got to Soul Herder and Blink. I don't even remember the name of the creature, but when it comes into play, you get to return an instant or sorcery from your graveyard.
Something peasant card,
and I was like, I'm just going to keep blinking this one creature to get counterspell back. Your turn.
Pass.
After I've attacked.
I was like,
attack. Get my counter magic back.
And
Go ahead.
Wait a minute, I'm starting to see a pattern here. We're not doing this anymore.
Yes, it's the you never get to cast a spell for the rest of the game pattern. It's great.
All right, Steve, you've walked into this mystery cube. You haven't prepped for it. You're okay with just some light information, like you said. It's a 3-drop cube, good enough. Or everything's reduced by 2, good enough. Or just like some really touch point, good enough. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Let's
just
rock and roll.
Hey, like, what's the gimmick? Or is it just like based on a constructed format? Like, that's it.
This is where we're getting into the actual topic here. I want to get into all of our different headspaces. So we're going to figure out a way to pass the ball here on these topics. So I'm going to ask the question, and then I'll answer it myself, and then I'll pass off to Steve, and we'll just kind of figure out an order that makes sense. But when you're going into a draft, do you have like draft habits? Like the question, the best way I could summarize this is I put some selections on here. Do you stay open as a draft strategy in your choices? Pack one, pick one. Do you force something as in, I just see this, I must do this? Do you gravitate towards a bomb of some sort? Like, I don't know, we'll just, for conversational purposes, we'll say something like Sundering Titan. Or do you trap yourself? And the reason why I added this one is because this really is kind of where I fall into, to a fault, guild construction and color pairings. Like, I will get colors like Rakdos because even if the cards aren't necessarily going to have long-term synergy, I just know these color pairings will function. So that'll be my answer. That is where I tend to lean into more often than not. So if I see a lot of blue and a lot of black, I'm just going to start picking that, knowing these colors like each other. And that's kind of the gist. How about yourself, Steve? Where do you fall on that choice spectrum?
I'm always looking for a deck, right? Like that's my goal. And my familiarity with the cube really depends like the detail that I go into with that. Like it can start from like, I have no idea, and this is like somebody's pauper cube, so like blue-white flyers seems like a pretty safe assumption. Let me just try to do that, right? Like, but you know, if I'm playing someone's vintage environment and I see a strip mine, pack one, pick one, like I'm like, okay, like I get this, I get the Renin 6, I get a crop rotation, I get the Dark Depths combo, like start playing off of that, like shutting out that land pick. Like it just depends. Like when you look at a pack one, pick one, there are cards that are so compelling that I think drive me to like, okay, I'm settled. And then there are other times when I look at a pack and it's like, okay, I could take a lightning bolt, I could take an elf, or I could take a counter spell. Like, what mask do I feel like putting on today? Like, you know, when there's not really like a real strong signal post. But I generally, like when I go into something, I'm trying to think about it as a deck. Because one, I really don't want to ever be like color locked when I draft, especially cubes with like above average fixing. Like I don't want to think about colors. I just want to think about like what I'm trying to do and then pick the cards based around that.
How about yourself, May? How would you answer that question? Where do you find yourself as a drafter? Depending on the environment, right? There's a lot of answers, but...
Well, yeah, obviously it depends, but generally speaking, I tend to follow a 3-part system, specifically for cube environments. Like, this doesn't transfer for a limited draft, obviously. But I start off as looking to a pack and asking, what are the best cards? What are the most fun cards? And then, what are the cards that keep me open? Because when I'm going down the list of how powerful is the good cards, is there multiple good cards? Are they all generally pretty powerful? Am I going to feel bad about picking a fun card? Then, if I feel like that I don't want to commit to that fun card, and I know that it's just going to be more options later, so say that there's a lot of different power that's going to be coming towards me, then I will go into keeping myself open depending on how committed everything is.
So I have kind of a middle question here, and then we'll get to Stu's part. But does anybody use in a cube environment, or is it exclusive to me? I find myself, I told you I do the guild pairings because that's always safe. Like, and that does, when you actually talked about blue-white flyers, I know that these lower power cubes, that evasion is very powerful. So I find myself oftentimes inadvertently leaning into the bread type of scenario. The same thing I would do like at a pre-release where I'm doing the bombs, the removal, the evasion, aggro, the duds or the dredges, right? Where I know like in a pre-release, and the one that I remember where I was most impactful is I did a Mardu deck where I actually took the first place. It's like the only first place in the history of my first places was at Event Horizon. It was at a Kaladesh, which that's my jam, right? Like I'm the artifact person anyway. So like, I'm like, all right, cool. I finally found something that gravitates towards the type of cube and what I like to build. And I took all of the gear hulks basically. And that was the bombs. And then I kind of moved towards the removal section to support that, and it was unstoppable. I find myself sometimes using bread and cubes more than I should. That's kind of jumping the script a little bit, going into some of the, I'm going to call it some of my habits that I gravitate towards too. Stu, do you find yourself choosing any of these, or are you absolve yourself from any of the habits I just talked about?
I have a very sequenced, like what May said, way of looking at a draft, right? And certainly looking at a pick one, pack one. My first priority is there a card in here that is going to enable a broken strategy that is going to allow me to win very quickly, right? So I posted in our Deck Bows channel on our Discord. Go check it out. A deck that I drafted yesterday that only went 1 and 2, but it was super fun and it had powerful things I could do with it, right? So I had Channel in there, and I don't draft Channel very often, but I took Channel. I took Emrakul, and I managed to channel Emrakul twice in the same evening, right? Back-to-back matches. I feel like I should get a T-shirt from someone somewhere. Like that can't happen that often.
You
right?
got tissues with tears on
Dude,
it. That's enough.
I want to give you a little gold star, be like, "Welcome to cubing, like draft channel, you big bozo."
I mean, why not? Why not? Right?
Channel is so fun. That's exactly what I'm referring to.
It was super fun. It was, but I'll tell you this. Yesterday, I got to experience something that doesn't happen very often when I'm playing Cube. Happens more so when I play Commander. Was the look of just disappointment on the faces of the two people when you say Channel, and they're like, and then you say Cast Emrakul, and they're like, oh.
So,
and it was a bit of Schadenfreude. Do I want to? Yeah, I'm not gonna say I don't feel bad about it. It felt glorious.
I believe when talking about cube drafts, Ryan Sachs once said, "Fun is a zero-sum game, and I'm having all of it."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Our friend Kevin says that to the high heavens. You'll get to meet Kevin, and you'll know. There's going to be a few at the UberCube event that there's some of us that are there as spectators, enjoying the libations and just fraternizing, and then there's the others where there's laser beams just firing off of mirrors all over the room. You'll get to meet Kevin. He's zero sum. My fun is my fun. If you didn't bring any with you, that's cool.
That's your fault. That's your problem.
But if you have extra fun, I'm willing to take your fun. That's literally a staple of Kevin.
My fun is playing Magic for 8 hours to just deflect one set of laser beams and just ruin their day. Like, if I go 1 and 8 and that one is just bumming out a grinder, like my day is made.
Yeah.
Like,
So, draft habits. We kind of I kind of talked about some of my ticks or some of the things I know I do. On top of, I gravitate towards guilds because it feels safe. And that's a lot of times falls into like a limited set. That'll oftentimes apply, for example, to like a Pauper or a Peasant Cube, where I know, like you said, Azorius Flyers is just something that's good. Or I know Rakdos, basically Aristocrats, is good. So the deck kind of finds itself, right? There's some navigation you can do, but you'll find the synergies just from the color pairings. Another tick that I do, and I've been noticing this when I do my pack one pick ones, I get locked up sometimes. Like I look at 2 cards, and I recently had something that I posted to our Discord where I saw Ancestral Recall and Time Walk in the same pack. And then there was a bunch of other things. Who cares, right? And the question that I presented before the Discord is, which one is the better pick in this conversation? And I thought there was some dialogue to be had there. I can give my point, but I don't want to create bias. I'm going to ask Steve, which one would you pick and why out of those 2 cards?
well, they're 2 of my favorite red cards in Cube. And they're both very strong with Goblin Guide. They're both very strong with Embercleave and Lightning Bolt. So I have a lot of respect for both of those Magic cards. Pack one, pick one. It depends on the environment, right? Like if I'm cubing with my friends and I'm having beers, I'm going to take the Time Walk because that's just going to let me do more degenerate fun stuff, I think, like that I don't get to do that often. But if I'm in an environment where I'm going to cube to try to win, I'm going to take the Recall, I think. And that's my personal, like, I don't think that's objectively correct at all. So
I don't think there's a right or wrong
to
there,
the listeners, right? Like I think those cards are so good that there's really not a wrong answer, and like the only wrong answer is giving an answer that doesn't mesh with your own personal play style is my personal opinion on that. So like for me, my answer is like, if I want to have fun, I'm going to take the time walk because I think I can have fun and do silly stuff that I don't normally do when I cube. But if it's an environment where I'm going to play to win, or if it's like a grudge match with my friends or something like that, then like, yeah, I'm going to take the recall, because for me personally, the way that I play the decks that I like to draft, I feel like the recall does more.
I think that's
like
fair.
I said, that answer is purely subjective.
Yeah, I picked the walk, and the reason is because I feel like walk is a little more, maybe only very slightly, but slightly more a card that I will build a deck around, at least the ability to be able to do that, whereas Ancestral is just generically one of, if not maybe the most powerful cards that's ever been printed, right? 1 mana for 3 cards is ridiculous. But then Time Walk, I will start to build the deck knowing that I have Time Walk, right? I'm going to go and try and get Planeswalkers. I'm going to go and try and get any kind of advantage that I can with having that specific card. And maybe it'll incentivize me to go and get Time Warp as well. But I agree. And because I'm draft for fun first, I think Time Walk would be my pick as well.
How about yourself, May? If you saw those two and pack one, pick one.
What are you choosing?
It's really hard not to take the time walk, but I think that I would cave and grab the Ancestral Recall. When it's pack one, pick one, at that point I haven't committed to doing anything yet. And don't get me wrong, like obviously it's power 9. Of course Time Walk's a great card. Its floor is that it's an explorer. But like at the end of the day, I just really prefer those extra cards, because drawing cards puts you back in the game.
It sure does. And I will say, this actually came up. We had a little mini game almost last week. Anthony and myself was joined by one of our close friends, and I open up a pack, and there is a Time Walk. And I'm thinking, my goodness, right? Anytime you get past a pack with a Time Walk or a Recall or a Black Lotus, my first thought thinking is, oh my God, what was in this pack for me to get past a Time Walk? And it was explained to me afterwards that the reason why I got past the Time Walk is because it did not fit the colors of the deck that the person who had the pack before me was drafting.
Was it in pack 3?
I would never pass that to you on purpose.
I'm never passing a Time Walk unless there's a Lotus or a Recall in there and I really need them, right? I don't really care what color's in there. I don't care if I've drafted 4 colors and got all the fixing and don't have a single pip of blue mana in anything that I've drafted. I'm still not passing that card, and I'm going to make it work, even if I have to put basic islands in the deck. Like there's just no way I'm giving that to someone. I can't do it consciously.
So I think there's some merit to what you're saying, but I'm also like, so to full disclosure to the listeners, I'm looking at this full pack that has that Recall and the Time Walk in it.
Right.
And there's also a Yogg-Will and a Gaia's Cradle, right? And like both of those cards are bonkers. And if I see Recall and Time Walk, and like Cradle can very well, like that dances in the same circle, right?
Sure.
So like if I'm looking at that and I'm like, I can throw these 2 bozos off on blue and just rake in elves, like there is something to be said for that.
It
like,
wasn't
the Yogg-Will becomes more risky, because if you're taking Yogg-Will, you want both of those cards, but like that Cradle is like also appealing to me because I'm going to throw everybody off to my left. That's 2 packs of essentially freebies.
So to really put it in perspective, our friend Stephen Konefal of the show, like he's actually joining us at the event too, just so you know. Shout out to Stephen. What I loved about his response to this is I would pass either one of these cards just to shock the pool, basically, and paraphrasing what he said, just to like make that person wonder what you took from a pack, to discombobulate the entire draft. Like you pass an Ancestral Recall and they're like, what did
I want to sit next to that person.
I loved everything about that response.
I want to sit next to that person every draft. If you are going to pass me Recalls and Time Walks to throw me off,
psychological warfare of
please
Cube.
do. I don't even think it was that significant.
Right? I draft with enough sickos where like I'm not going to do it for fun, but like or like for the lulls, like that's not a mental. Like my friends are just gonna be like, "Wow, Steve's drafting like an idiot again." Great. Like there's no like psychological warfare that I can play with the people that I usually cube with. So for me, it's like, but I do think there is merit in the cradle, just because you're kind of putting a real flag in the ground, like this is what I'm gonna do, and you're really like. It kind of fits into the mental game explanation, but it's not, I don't know. You could draw the blurred line, but like having those two players assuredly fighting for blue lands and blue cards because one of them's got a recall, one of them's got a time walk, and they both know that because they're yamming about it at the table. Like, that's the thing. Like, that's real. So you could call that part of the psychological warfare part, but like, I think that there is. If somebody really made a case for the cradle, I wouldn't be mad at them. But I'm still probably going to snap the recall.
Yes.
If I'm trying to win the draft.
Yeah, and that I'm pretty confident in saying that the card that was taken instead of Time Walk was just another card. It was an okay card. It wasn't something that was power adjacent or even close to the power level of like a Time Walk or a recall. It was just,
Unless
hey,
I
we
have
think
like
this
two
fits
or
better.
three cards that have 3 colored pips that aren't blue, and it's pack 3. Like if I have like Cavalier of Thorns that I'm going to hard cast and I don't have any blue lands and like I see a tireless, like, but even still, I probably wouldn't, but I could see someone justifying like, I'm going to take a tireless tracker over this because it's just not going to come together for me in pack 3. But like the thing about an in-person cube draft is you're playing against the people at the table. So like, you almost just say like, nah, like no, like fun police that card and just move on. So like,
maybe this is a little more meta, and sometimes this crops up in our podcast, is the ability to generate, certainly in a vintage cube, mana, and certainly any color of mana with things like treasures is so prevalent in the game nowadays that splashing 1 blue mana for the rest of your deck, even if the rest of your deck isn't blue, for a card as powerful as Recall or Time Walk really isn't very difficult. And if it's early in pack 3, which it's going to be because there's no way that a Time Walk / Ancestral should survive past 2 or 3 turns at most, 1 turn, I'm going to spend the rest of the draft just picking up fixing. Give me that blue.
So let's start out with May on the next question. May, would you say that your draft habits that you have, the way that your style of drafting a cube, that they, well, removing whether or not this matters, right? For me, what I'm about to ask you doesn't matter so much, right? But does it impact your win-loss rate, your habits? What do you think?
No, because I'll give you a hint. I'm not a good Magic player.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
That is not true.
The choice I make in the draft,
all.
no matter how confident I am in whatever deck I'm building, I am not a good player.
Man, I've played against
when
you.
it comes to actually resolving and remembering my triggers and doing things in the proper order and whatnot. Sometimes I skip, I panic, and then I'm like, oh, shoot, I just threw the game. And it happens so often.
Yeah, my
my
situation. Yeah, I'm with you. Like I'm in the middle of doing like a complex storm count, and the other day, Christian goes, "Hey, do you have any spirit tokens?" And I'm like, "Storm count? What storm count was? What? Stu, where was I?" He's like, "I don't know." I'm like, "All right, cool. All right." So, and I did not complete the storm. I have no idea. That's how good of a Magic player I am. So some of these, I think if I had to call me something, I'm a good cube curator. I understand what Stu and Steve want to see. I can build a good deck. I am not a good pilot. I'm no Maverick in this story. I'm Goose. I'm always pulling the egress.
I'm the same way.
Pour one out for
It's
Goose,
why I'm a curator and not a player.
Yeah, so I build this for your enjoyment. This is what I do. So I learn. I'm going to jump ahead. This is another question I have here. Over time, Steve, what have you learned from other drafters? I can tell you I've learned a lot.
I mean, so that's how I learned to draft, right? So, I mean, I have fortunate to have a couple very close friends that have Pro Tour experience, and like just the exposure to the cube community over the last year at like a national level has just like taught me so much about like I think for me, as somebody who has tendency towards playing aggressive decks, I think one of the things, like, there's two real things that I'm trying to improve in my game right now. And it's being able to understand a relative power level when looking at packs. Because like you said, like I can build a deck, right? You can build a deck, but like oftentimes when I've done cubes, especially cubes that I'm not familiar with, I'll build a deck and be like, this deck is great. And then I'll just get tranched, like just get ranched, right? And it's like I'm on an okay play. I'm not great at Magic, right? Like I feel like you like I've been playing for a long time, but it's not a game that I profess to be good at. Probably because I know so many people that are actually good at the game.
I was going to say, you're talking about your Pro Tour friends, right? That's got to be kind of difficult to, in some ways, match up against people that are very, very good like that. I know for myself, I would struggle greatly against a moderately good player. I'm fortunate that I play with, like, Anthony and stuff, and so none of our group is very good at Magic.
So I beat Stu last night, like, literally. I just want to point out that I built a 3-0 deck, so I'm not as awful as I project.
You did.
But one of the things that we had this interesting conversation. I rolled up, I got a little early to the draft. Stu and I came in, and we started talking to our good friend Samich, a.k.a. Chris, has been in a lot of the things. And we were talking about kind of the variance between being an okay casual player. Like, I'm not in it to win it. I'm there to see people have a good time. I'm a lot like May. Like, I built the cube so that other people can enjoy it, frankly. Like, I have more fun watching you all smile. Like, truly, that's the joy that I get out of cube. What I get as far as feedback, right? Like, hey, this is a good cube, right?
Yeah.
But as I'm playing more Magic, the differences that I see over time that makes me not, like, I'm never going to be a pro player. I'm not a grinder. I don't practice all the time. But if I wanted to be, that's what I would do. But what I see players that are better, and I'll use my friend Kevin, our friend Sam, I'm going to use you with what you've said, even Stu, the difference between me and the 4 people that I just listed is the little micro changes, the micro decisions that happen. It's everything from that singular decision to use that mana at that certain timing, right? Some of that EDH profile that's bled over that I'm slowly shirking away, but it made me a little slower where my decisions were more campy, more, I guess, not like 1v1 oriented where you were so designed around a cube that gave you more turns to develop so then you can get a strategy and you had more linear kind of, you had a flow chart that was forming, right? And you could make decisions from the flow chart, but there was time mechanisms with the going around the 4 players that created like this variance. When you go 1v1, it is literally go, pass, go, pass.
Yeah, there's no distractions when you're playing in a 1v1 environment, right?
So
with
it's a
EDA,
tempo type of thought chain that happens.
Yeah, with Commander, you can always like use the politics and use the powers of distraction. And I've mentioned this on other episodes. Anthony is a politician.
The mayor of Magicville.
He is the mayor. He is always the ignore my brutal broken combo piece that I've got out right now. That guy's Birds of Paradise, that gives him access to any color. Like, use your unconditional removal spell on that rather than my piece that's going to win the game next turn.
In
right?
my defense, you always bolt the bird. Always. Steve?
I mean, his favorite card's Lightning Bolt. Of course he's bolting the bird.
I don't know. I think like the first level is understanding, at least in my head, this is how I think about it, right? Like the first level is understanding the timing of your play, right? And I think I'm okay there. But for me, I think the next level is just remembering stuff, right? Like timing is level 1. Number 2 is remembering stuff. Like, what are the removal spells in your opponent's deck? Like most of the cubes we do, we're all sitting there talking. Like the people that are like when you're running around talking about your deck, like the people that are trying to win are like, okay, like you have a lightning bolt and a counter spell and a man. Like, what are the things you know about your opponent's deck? And are you clocking all of that? And like, are you understanding, like, are you actively not just thinking about your play, but are you trying to understand how your opponent's trying to beat you? Like once you master like the timing of play and like understanding how to maximize your own personal strategy, for me, the next thing is like, if I'm them, how am I trying to win with all the information I know about them? So like, that's like, for me, like that's where I'm at. And then mulliganing, right? Mulliganing, I think, is the hardest thing in Magic. So sorry.
It's okay.
Bork.
Princess is borking.
Nope, that's not Princess.
No, that's me. I apologize.
You Bork?
I have a Bork.
Sounds like your dog stopped. So
Let's go back to some more questions about the draft actual decisions. This is what I want to know. Like, May, I'm going to keep focusing on May because the other two.
Hi.
Hi, May. So when you're looking at a pack, are you looking at color percentages within the pack? Kind of when they talked about like
absolutely.
Yeah, creating that dissension amongst the draft, right? You're trying to find it's an open lane, but can you create tension where people fight over things? That's what I'm trying to summarize. Are you that player?
So if it's pack one, pick one, and I'm looking at how many colors are in a pack, unless there's something really, really good in that pack, in that color, then at that point I'm sure something might will to me. But I am not going to pick that color out of confidence. If everything in the pack is like relatively about the same amount of pick order, right? Then I'm going to just pick a different color. Because when that gets passed around, then people will see, oh, there's 4 blue cards in here. Then the next person might see, oh, there's like 3 blue cards in here, right? And then next person's like, okay, 2, they may or may not. And the next person, by the time it gets back to me, sure, great. I might end up with another blue card, but I will always have this one color, whatever, and I have a bigger chance of getting that back. If that makes sense.
It does. How about yourself, Stu?
I tend to not worry as much about color and more focus on what the archetypes are. Like, it sucks to see, like, when you open up a pack, Vintage, I'll go to Vintage, and you see Entomb and Reanimate and Animate Dead all in the same pack, right? You open up like, okay, I'm not, if I pick Entomb here, I'm not getting the rest of those cards back, right? I might get one of them back, but there's a much higher likelihood that all those 3 cards are going to be gone because Entomb is powerful even outside of Reanimate, and Animate Dead and, you know, Reanimate themselves. They're very powerful cards, and you can take them for value. So now I'm looking at what card can I take that is powerful in an archetype that may be open or that I can even force, because I love to force, that is not focused on that color. Right, so I might even take the Entomb if I'm thinking, okay, now I will look for Echo of Eons and Wheel Effects and that kind of stuff, right? So I generally tend, like, I suppose to summarize, I focus less on the colors and more on the archetypes that are going to exist in the cube.
So one of the things, as we mentioned, Stu's been drafting the bejesus out of my Powered Vintage Cube and also some other cubes too, like. And I'll say Chris does this too. It's interesting, like Sandwich, whenever we do like a draft night and we announce the cube that's coming that night, I will see, or the curator will see on their profile drafts happening because they kind of prep for the draft. But one of the things that I heard Stu say is the word force. I hear Stu say force a lot, like because
I did it last night.
You're a tester of an idea.
Yes.
You don't have the fear of the win-loss. You're more in it for the validation of a concept, so experimentation.
Maybe this is habitual based on maybe a professional side of things, maybe a personality things, I don't know. But testing, like I work in cybersecurity, for anyone who doesn't know that, and maybe no one does or cares, because I don't even care.
It's too late, their stuff's already been hacked.
But I work in cybersecurity, so I do, so testing and design is a lot of what I do. So I tend to gravitate towards that kind of mindset when I'm drafting and playing. Like, I want to test something, and sometimes it's not I want to test something that's unknown, or I want to break barriers with this cube. Yesterday I specifically picked up Oath of Druids because to me that is a card that when you look at and in a vacuum should be super powerful, but for some reason it just doesn't work. Like it just doesn't. I don't know why. I just don't seem to be able to get it to work, at least not very often. So yesterday, I picked up a couple of cards. It wasn't like a pick one, pack one, but I picked up Oath of Druids, I think maybe towards the end of pack one or early pack two, and I drafted the rest of the cube around the fact that I had Oath of Druids in my deck and Channel in my deck. And I'm not going to not pick up any Emrakuls or Worldspine Worms or anything like that for the rest of the draft. So I definitely had that as a consideration. But I wanted to test, like, what can I do? How can I push myself as a player? How can I push myself as a drafter to make something like that work? Make something like that work that I know isn't going to work. And it didn't work. I went 1 and 2. And Oath of Druids, I don't think I drew it one time, except for maybe once, and it was just too late in the game anyway. The Channel works spectacularly. I don't know if I mentioned this already, but I got to channel Emrakul 2 times, and I'm waiting for my T-shirt. Anyway, so yeah, I think that's kind of the habits that I've got over time. Is I want to test, I want to push myself, and I want to push the cube a little bit, right? I want to challenge the curator. Like, here's what I can do with your cube, you know.
Someone asked that question of Steve and of May. You guys can volley this as you want to, but my question is, do you ever test the limits of someone's cube? Whenever, are you interested in the idea of someone presents like? Are you okay with being like the pilot tries to break the sound barrier type thing, right? Like, are you?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm a Johnny Jenny player. Of course, I'm looking to do whatever is the most weird thing that I can do. I value funness very, very highly.
I do too.
Don't get me wrong. I'm still going to try to like pick the best cards in the pack. But if I can work my way into taking from the best cards until like pack 2, pack 3, and now I'm looking at, all right, I now have a core of a deck. What's the fun thing I want to do? How am I wanting to like break this and do stupid things, even if it's just like once?
How about yourself, Steve?
So I don't know. I if I consent to being a test subject, I'm okay with it. But I'm not always in the mood to do that. Basically, that's my opinion on it. But I will say really quickly, because it's searing fresh in my memory from MagicCon Chicago, Stu. I got to play in a cube with Sam from Ristic Studies.
Okay.
On YouTube.
Oh, fun.
We played against each other, and I had a great green-red Ponza deck, all the land destruction, Renin 6, Strip Mine Wasteland. Turn 1, Vampiric Tutor. Turn 2, Oath of Druids. Both games beat the pants off of me 2-0. It was non-magic.
Wow.
Oath of Druids is like mouse. You just got to learn how to build around it.
Listen, I tried so hard. It just didn't. Look, I'm still convinced of the card. I wouldn't have drafted it yesterday if I didn't have a fair amount of confidence in it. I don't know what it is about Oath. And I will say this. I am a student of the game. I am a consumer of content with the game as well, right? So I will watch as much Vintage Cube content that is out there that I have the time to watch, and it's just not an archetype that I see drafted or is successful as often as I think it should.
So I'm going to put that in the same category.
I'm happy for Sam.
I'm going to take Oath of Druids. I'm going to take Channel. I'm going to take Eureka, and I'm going to take Show and Tell and clump those together. We can put some other stuff in there if we wanted to. Those are the risk it for the biscuit decks.
I would disagree on Oath.
Those are the conversational talking type of.
I don't know about Oath. I think Oath is a deck that, like, I'm not going to play it. I'm not going to put Oath into play when I have 6 creatures, which I'm probably not going to, or even if I have 2 creatures and my opponent has 1. Right? You've got to time things very carefully with Oath. Show and Tell is very much risk it for the biscuit, right? You don't know what's in your opponent's deck, at least if it's game 1. And actually what's interesting is the deck that I played first yesterday with my Oath Channel deck, I played against someone who had Show and Tell in their deck. And you know what the first thing they did was, after I Channel Emrakul game 1, is that Show and Tell's out of there. So, well, that's no good.
Well, yeah,
there's no point me pulling Show and Tell against
to
someone that's got Emrakul in their deck.
I bet they wish they had bribery at that point that I cut. But so it's kind of the slot machine like with some of those decision makings. That's what I would argue. Like, some of those decks are very experimental in their nature. You have to be kind of the I'm willing to do the risk reward type of scenario there. I think it's fair. One more thing that I have about the draft decisions, that it's another draft habit that I have. Even though I say I'm open to pips, you were talking about, what was the Thorn earlier, the 3-drop green card?
Yeah, the Cavalier of Thorns is the 5-drop with 3 green pips.
I could never grab that. Even that's a good card. Like, that's a good Magic card. Like, if you were mono green, that's a solid Magic card. There's a red one too, or red one and a blue one they're fantastic. There's nothing wrong with them. But I find myself during the draft scenario literally doing this every time. I gravitate towards Esper more than I should, and I always grab single pips. Do pips drive your decisions at all? Like, I have a hard time. The only time that I'll even break outside of a pip scenario is once I have enough bonding cards that I'll get, like, an Azorius, type of counter spells, what I'm saying. The new one. I can't think of the name of it. No More Lies.
No More Lies, yeah.
But once I've got enough, I guess, density within that spectrum, then I'll grab the binding piece. That's when I actually break out. But otherwise, I am grabbing single pip cards nonstop. I will draft mana as a habit it keeps me open, but I could have just done the same thing off of basics sometimes. Does that make sense? Like,
Sure.
I'm trying too hard to build a robust deck, but I'm just I'm single pipping all day. I'm single pipping. That's like Jay-Z. Isn't that Jay-Z?
We're not adding that. It's a fair point.
But do you find yourself doing that at
No.
all? May? Do pips change your decisions?
I care a lot about the pips because the pips I see like kind of a step below gold cards in the same way that I wouldn't immediately commit to a gold card unless it's like worth committing to. Is the same reason I wouldn't commit to 2 or 3 pips of a card unless it's really good. And the answer for how many pips and why I'm actually tracking them, it just comes down to what's the most open. Are those things that are giving me pips powerful? Are they fun? Or do they keep me open? And the reality is that there's a lot of times where I'd just rather stay open unless it's just really good. So
I think what we kind of captured here is the minds of the drafters. Like, and it's hard to make that really, I guess, tangible. That there is difficulty, and it's all decisions. It's micro decisions we're all making. Some of us gravitate more to the draft. Some of us gravitate more towards the design of the cube. Some of us are fun driven. Some of us are, you can tell me if I'm wrong, spike driven, as in you're going in for the win. Your decisions are really based on that idea. There's a lot of variance on what the type of players and whether or not you're letting the cards inform the draft. You're staying open. You're forcing. You're trying to do Oath of Druids because it's really cool and you want a validity test. There's so many dynamics to this. Would you agree with that, Steve? Like, and it's hard. It's a poker game happening at a table. It's wild with 8 people.
No, I think, and that's something that I think in like, it just pays off in Magic, and it really pays off no matter what your goal is, whether your goal is to have fun or your goal is to win. It really, really pays off to have a good awareness of your environment and like, just like generally like the other player's MO, the other player's mode, like whether you're playing, because I think like whether it's cube or commander, like your experience isn't necessarily your own. And I think that you have to like no matter what you're trying to do, it benefits to have an awareness of your goal. And it benefits to have an awareness of the environment you're in. And then from there, you can start to build a decision tree that's going to lead you to like the most positive outcome for you, no matter where that rainbow ends.
Yeah, I love that because that rainbow can end in, I want to build the most degenerate deck possible. It can end in, I'm testing this forced strategy that I just figured would, be something that I would try out that day. Or it could be like, I want to have fun today. I'm not always. Sometimes I want to min-max the draft. Sometimes I just want to force something that's goofy. Sometimes I want to test something out. My mindset is what drives my fun and my enjoyment of what I'm trying to do when I draft a cube, when I play Magic at all, right? I think, I don't want to speak for everybody in Magic, or for all the players out there. And it depends on what I do, right? What deck, if I'm playing Commander, do I pull out of my backpack when I show up to our friend's house, right? Do I want to have fun? I'm going to play that deck. Do I want to do something a little different? I'll pull that deck. Do I want to min-max and be degen? I'll pull out that deck. And I think the same thing is for Cube. What do I want to do? How deep into it do I want to go? And how much do I care about trying to win, which is all the time. I want to win every time.
To really get you in the goofy headspace of my fun level, I was watching a Twitch streamer recently, and they invited me over. I'm watching it, and they've got Swamp. I say play Swamp. I'm like, what should I do? I'm like, play Swamp, do Dark Ritual, cool. Him to Torok your opponent. He's like, I don't want to do that. I'm like, him to Torok your opponent. He's like, doesn't seem like okay, I'm gonna do it. Him to Torok. Elish Norn goes in the graveyard. Okay, now reanimate. Win game. Scoop. That really closes off like the thought process of where I'm sitting at sometimes. Like that really sums up, like, I'm in there for the fun and for that janky nonsense, and I'm trying to be fluid during these drafts and get to be a better drafter, but I think sometimes
one day you will be.
The draft habits really inform the draft.
One day you will be a
that's why
really
I did
good drafter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Andy Mangold has talked about it a bit, but it's like in his pursuit be a better drafter while doing like casual cubes on a regular basis. I think you just like one of the main things, and it's true for a lot of things in life, like if you have a goal, like you just need to be conscious of it. Like you need to be in the present and be aware and understand what your goal is in the moment. So like if you want to get better, it doesn't mean you can't have fun, but you should be in the present thinking about the decisions you're making and then seeing the results and then understanding how you could improve on the decisions you made. That doesn't mean you can't have fun. Doesn't mean you have to get salty when you lose or want to flip a table. Like it's just about being conscious and like having a clear path towards whatever that thing is that you want out of this game. That is the best game on the planet.
Yes. I think that just sums it up beautifully.
It does.
It does. All right. As we wind down, let's go all the way back to the beginning, Steve. Let's talk about www.youtube.com/@cubeheads, right? Tell us about what your vision is. Tell us what you're trying to do with that.
So like I said, yeah, I just want to have conversations with people at Magic events. I want to talk to people about their cubes. It's a very fluid project. I have no dreams of content creation replacing my income whatsoever. So like everything I do is just because I want to do it.
We don't know anything about that life.
I was hoping for that. I'm really waiting for this UberCube podcast to take off, and I don't have to work anymore. It's not happening.
Dividends.
But
Yeah.
Super cool project.
So I like the stuff that I have upcoming, I have an interview. So hopefully the audio is okay. I'm in the process of determining that right now, but I have an interview with the MTG ambassador.
It's okay.
Oh.
Don't worry about the bark.
Is the borking coming through?
Yeah, we got
don't
barking.
worry about the bark.
Sorry.
We have babies and borking. We're fine. This is what our podcast
We
does.
are
Keep
not
going.
worried about the barking.
Keep going.
Sorry. So I have an interview coming up. Hopefully, if the audio is okay, with Tron is bad, the MTG ambassador,
Nice.
which should be a cool conversation. It was at a Super Bowl party, so it was really hectic. So like that's why I'm worried about the audio a little bit because my lav mics were not working.
Since you're doing that too, I want to put a shout out to Tron is Bad to come to the UberCube event because that individual frequents the LGS, the gathering place. So I would love to get that.
Yeah. Tell him to come along.
He played with us last time. He was the when we did the Extra Life. He was such a cool dude. He actually knew you. I came up and talked to him, whatever. And I'm like, we need a emperor, we need a big bad, a villain to sit down with the two-headed giants because all these people were having such a great time. I just need you to take this deck. I know you didn't draft it. Just be the person for the final. And I was handing out packs. Stephen Cohenfall gave us like packs on top of packs. We had like Modern Horizons.
He gave us 2 boxes.
Two boxes.
Modern
So,
Horizons and
it was
something else.
magical Christmas land for drafters. We're just like, here you go. Everybody, you get a pack and you get a pack. But it was so cool that Tron is Bad sat down and it's like, all right, cool, let's go. And sat down with a partner, two-headed giant. You're playing for the mega win here. It was so fantastic. Such a great person. So I really would love to see them at the event.
Yep.
Oh yeah, no, he's awesome. And whether this interview happens or not, it probably won't be the last conversation I have with him on the channel. He's local to the Philly-ish area and a great dude. So, and then I just filmed a ton of stuff in Chicago. That'll probably be one video. I have 5 interviews on there. Some of the highlights, I'll keep some of them down, but some of them are. So I talked to Dinrova Horror, who has the companion cube. Greg, who's a fantastic person. I talked to the proxy guy. If you don't know the proxy guy from Twitter or you've seen his work, and he's a longtime friend of mine from way, way, way back in the day. So it was good to connect with him. He's kind of local to the Chicago, Illinois area. And then next weekend is SCG Philly. So I'm hosting Noah from Madison, who's coming to my house, and I'm assuming we're going to be filming content that weekend. So a lot of stuff in the pipeline. Very glad I hired a video editor because it was just, I tried to learn Adobe, but last year the content pipeline was just too slow. So hopefully this year you'll see more frequent stuff from me and just hopefully trying to shine a light on the human side of Magic. I assume I'm going to film a ton of content.
Yes.
At the UberCube event.
Yep.
So
We'd like to.
I'll be bringing full gear, ready to go.
Look at that.
Point at people's face, talk about Magic. So yeah, I'm excited about it. And like I said, it's just it's a passion project for me because I care about Cube and I think it's the best way to play Magic if you've been playing the game for a long time. And I think between the creative outlet of designing a cube and the spiky outlet of trying to win a cube. I think Cube provides so much for every kind of Magic player that like we've really only got the tip of the iceberg now. And I'd love to be a part of shining more light into how awesome the stuff that we love to do is. So
you heard it here
that's
first.
the end of my diatribe.
It's-
At Slick Jagger, at Slick_Jagger_ on Twitter. The original at Slick Jagger took my handle after I deactivated my account in 2016 and won't give it back. So that's great.
Different subject.
Yeah.
Way different subject.
Well,
Thank you all so much for having me. This has been a blast. So.
yeah. Well, first of all, to Steve, thank you very much for coming on the show today. This was a lot of fun. I always love to get insights from other community members, other people who are just obviously as passionate about Cube and Magic as you are. So again, thank you very much for coming on. This was wonderful. I also want to do a huge shout out to, or actually give a huge promotional shout out, if you will, to, again, our event here on April 27th in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. We are getting, Anthony said 64 players. We're hoping 64 players are going to come out and join us at the Gathering Place for an 8-cube event. We've got a Power Cube top 8. We've got all kinds of cubes that's going to be going on in the main event. Lots of fun. Prizes, karaoke after the event. So much more is going on.
The raffles are sick.
Exactly.
There's a mystery booster. There's all kinds of stuff.
All kinds of fun. There's going to be a QR code in the show notes that we're going to obviously post in our Discord. If you would like to come along and hang out with us and do some cube drafting, we'd love to have you come along and hang out with us. First of all, as part of the outro, as always, I want to give a huge shout out to all of our Patreons, to Keaton Schultz, Lord Justice, Chris Singer, Nick Lapointe, Stephen Conifal, Preston, and Sam McKenna. Huge thank you and much love to you guys for the ongoing support of the show. And to all of our listeners, if you've enjoyed this episode as well as all of our others, we'd appreciate you giving us a 5-star review on your chosen podcast platform.
It goes a long way to spread the word.
Huge way, yes. Yep. Get Cube out there.
Get Cube out there.
And if you're looking for some bling for your cubes, you can also use our Alter Sleeves affiliate link, altersleeves.com/UberCube, to get 5% off your purchase.
I got a comment last night from our friend Sam, and she's like, dude, this Mana Vault is sick. I'm
It
like,
is.
It's so good, right?
But what is it?
It's an altar sleeve.
It's an altar sleeve.
It's so gorgeous.
It's so pretty.
Oh my goodness. Altar sleeves are sick. It's all artist rendered. Yep. Absolutely just gorgeous. Hand painted, then reproduced, obviously. But just stunning. Like, if you want to support artists, this is like an entire way to do that. Like, yeah,
That's
it's
right.
Fantastic.
That's right. Cool stuff.
Great project.
And you can also use our Inked Gaming affiliate link if you want to go and check them out for some playmats, dice bags, mouse pads, all kinds of custom products available for your Magic experience. Go check them out. As always, reach out to us.
We got to get Steve one of those sick UberCube playmats.
I'm going to bring one.
Got to put that.
I'm going to bring one.
It's on the list.
I'm going to bring one. You can find us on Twitter. We are at UberCubeMTGPod. You can also reach us via email, UberCubeMTGPodcast@gmail.com. And as always, come hang out with us on the Discord. I would really appreciate you coming along, and go check out the Deck Bows channel and just tell me how wonderful my channel Oath of Druids Emrakul deck was. Give me validation.
So
I
much
need
fun.
it.
So much fun. Oh, so yeah. We're just skipping right over my Grizzlebrand that won. All right, cool.
Everyone knows Reanimate.
We're going to say the
any
thing
points
now
there.
that we always say here at UberCube. Steve's going to join us is Happy
Happy
Cubing!